Iceland, a subarctic paradise which is definitely on top of the list of the best exotic ski destinations in the world. Let's talk about when is the best time to come, where you can actually go skiing here, and then let's touch on some other things like gear talk, weather, clothes and more. And if this idea ever crossed your mind, or maybe you are just trying to gather all the information for your upcoming trip, then this video might be right for you. I've been living and skiing here since 2017. And trust me, I went through a lot of bad skiing and sketchy situations before I learned everything that I know now. And so with this video, I'm hoping that I can at least help some of you to avoid all the struggles and basically higher your chances of getting the most out of your ski trip here in Iceland. So the first important thing is to decide when is the best time to come. And this is something I'm not gonna go very deep into, as I've done a whole separate video about this topic and I'll make sure to leave a link in the description below. But generally speaking, you could divide the winter here into three parts. The first one would be a dark period from September till end of January. And even though I've experienced some very good skiing in this time of the year, the conditions and the weather are just too sketchy and unreliable to recommend it to anyone. The next part, from February till end of March, is when you can test your luck and come hunting some Arctic powder. We already get plenty of daylight during that time of the year, and so if the weather is good, you can experience some really good skiing. That is, of course, unless you are very unlucky and everything turns into ice and you cannot really ski anything about 30 degrees. The third part of the season is my favorite part of the year, which is May and April. And that's simply because of the amount of daylight we get, more stable weather, and safer spring snow conditions. The downside, on the other hand, is the boot packing you'll have to do. And how much? Well, that all depends on the amount of snow that we get during the winter. But before we move on, I just want to say that every year is completely different, and you cannot really say when the switch between the winter and spring season will exactly happen. Okay, so now let's talk about where you can actually go skiing. Let's start close to the airport first. There we can find Bláfjöll, which is a ski resort, and I would only visit it if, let's say, you have enough time after the arrival or before the departure. Thing is, there isn't that much of off-piste skiing there, as this part of Iceland generally doesn't get as much snow as some of the northern parts of the island. Sure, I mean there are still some ski lines which I've seen people skiing, but I think that you really need a good winter to do that. The same thing goes for the whole south of Iceland. And I know that some of the locals do find places to ski there, with perhaps the most popular being ski touring to the highest mountain of Iceland. But in general, south of Iceland isn't really what I would call a ski destination. But let's move a little bit further north. On the west of Iceland, we can find Snæfellsnes Peninsula. From what I know, the mountains which are located in the middle aren't the easiest to access, but on the end of it, we can find Snæfellsnes, which I've been to before but still haven't had a chance to ski it. It is this beautiful glacier on the end of peninsula. You can basically do this on your own if you are experienced in moving on the glacier, hire a guide, or there is also a cat skiing option which you can book. Here in the highlands of Iceland, we can find Kerlingafjöll. The geothermal area of the interior of Iceland is a favorite place to go skiing of many people from Reykjavik. But for you as a tourist, this isn't likely a trip that you can do on your own, as the only way to get there during the winter is with a super jeep. And so you can either try to find a guide or use a transportation option of Kerlingafjöll Mountain Resort, which will cost you some 18,000 Icelandic kronas each way. But the most expensive part of this trip will be probably the accommodation there, which will cost you around 100,000 Icelandic kronas for 2 nights. Now, if this sounds too expensive and complicated, there is another option. And that's Westfjords, located on the northwest of the island. This area of Iceland is quiet even during the high season, therefore in the winter it will feel like you have it all for yourself. There are many beautiful mountains with great terrain, oftentimes just few steps from the road. The northern part of the area can also receive a good amount of snow, and you can also find a ski area there, located in the capital of this region, town Ísafjörður. And if you have extra money to spend, this area is also very popular for sailing and ski touring trips. And so this is basically when you sail from fjord to fjord, ski during the day and then sleep on the boat. And I believe that experience like this will probably cost you at around $4,000 to $5,000 for about 6 days long trip. Another beautiful part of Iceland with great terrain that can hold some good snow are Fjords. Though I've only had a chance to ski once here, I liked it a lot. Similar to Westfjords, this is a very quiet place with many hidden fjords. And you can also find a ski area here called Oddskart, which has a lot of fun terrain around it and also some incredible views. And this is also a place where a very cool Austurland freeride festival is being held every year. And this year 2024 specifically, between 6th and 10th of March. So make sure to check it out if you are here at this time of the year. And I also recommend you to look up Runar on Instagram, Icelandic snowboarder who is from this area and who's got a lot of great footage from here. Now the last place on this list is Troll Peninsula, which even though some locals might disagree, in my opinion this is the best place to come skiing. And I don't really want to argue here which area has the best terrain, but if I consider everything, then I think this is quite obvious. First, this part of Iceland gets often the highest amount of snowfall, has a very accessible terrain, and also all this terrain is compacted into a very small location, and so you won't really have to drive a lot. There is also a ski area Hlíðarfjall, located in town Akureyri, which I think is the best ski resort in Iceland. It has some really good freeride terrain, and it is a great plan B for when the weather isn't suitable for ski touring. There is also one lesser known and also my favorite ski area, which is located in Siglufjörður, and which is also a home to a freeride competition Siglo Freeride, which is definitely an event worth checking out. And one lesser known fact is that you can even take an international flight from London straight to Akureyri, which, if that makes sense for where you are flying from, this can save you a 6-hour drive from Keflavik International Airport. And all that means is more time for skiing. But even though Troll Peninsula is sort of a safe answer to the question where to go skiing in Iceland, there is one little flaw that this area has. There are together 4 heli-ski companies at the moment, which if you happen to be ski touring somewhere in the same time where heli-skiers are, some people might find the noise pollution quite disturbing. And that is basically one case when you might want to consider going completely off the beaten path to some of the other places I've mentioned. But if you have the budget and you want to come heli-skiing, after watching this video you can check out the video link in the description below, where I compare all of these heli-ski companies. But all in all, Troll Peninsula is a place where I live and where I ski for 95% of the time. And so if you are coming here, I put together a guide of all of my favorite lines in the area. It has descriptions of the routes and it is connected to FatMap, where you can see the exact routes. Plus I also marked all the locations using the Google Maps. And so basically all you have to do is to enter your location and the map will take you right to the parking spot. And for all of you who like a help planning your ski trip, I can assist you with that too. Just head over to my website and see if that's something that you might be interested in. Okay, then when it comes to skis that you should bring, I've been using these forefronts, which are these all-mountain skis with I think 107 underfoot, and it is on the wider side, but honestly I would rather have a little bit wider skis here than too narrow. Because the thing is, you really want to have something that you can use for all kinds of conditions, from deep powder to spring snow, hardpack, slopes, ice, everything. And this is basically a one ski quiver that I've been using for past few years and I've been very happy with it. And also I have a shift binding mounted on it, so it's a heavier setup, but you don't really have to expect any long tours here. It usually takes up to 2-3 hours to get to the top, so you don't need any super light setup. And the same thing goes for any fuel that you might want to carry with you, because the trips are usually so short. You can usually just get away with a little water flask and then some little snacks. And with the clothes you can usually keep it pretty simple as well, like unless you go winter camping you don't need that many clothes. And I mean, sure, we have some days when it gets down to -20 or something, but usually it's just a little bit below zero. And so oftentimes, for example, I don't even wear an extra layer under my ski pants. And at the top I just have one layer of some thermo shirt. And then I basically just bring like a one down jacket just in case, and then one shell. basically just something that won't let any wind through, because that's probably the worst part here, the wind. And it's also nice to have a little buff and some warm gloves, and I think you are all set. And of course have your avalanche gear with you, but I hope that if you are already planning your ski trip to Iceland, that this is something that I don't even have to mention, and this is something that you will bring and that you know how to use. Now let's take a look where you can check the weather forecast. And in my opinion, you should keep it very simple and just use this one website, weather.is. And all you have to do is to just switch it to English up here and then click on one of these maps here. And then you just choose the area. So let's just say that we are in Troll Peninsula. So this is where the northwest map will work the best. And here you can basically see the strength of the wind. And you have these arrows indicating the direction of the wind, and then the colors indicate the strength of the wind. And then right up here we have temperature, and next to it precipitation. So you can just check this out and play with this a little bit. This is a very useful tool. And then another thing that you wanna check out is avalanche tab. And here you have basically the avalanche forecast, and you can see all the information here. And so again, I think that this is the only and the most accurate forecasting website for Iceland that you can use. But if you really want to nerd about the weather, you can also combine it with website belgingur.is, which the only downside is that it is all in Icelandic, but I don't think it's very difficult to figure it out. And one more thing that I want to mention is that if you decide to come to ski in Iceland, you just have to be okay with the fact that there is always a chance that you will have a bad conditions during the whole trip. And if that happens, just don't push it too much, because that's what has caused many serious accidents here in the past. And 95% of the time, it is when the conditions are basically unskiable, but people go out there anyway. But if you cannot ski and the weather won't allow it, or maybe the conditions are sketchy, I mean, you can always find something to ski, at least around ski area, or just leave your skis in the car and go visit some of the hot springs, pools and waterfalls and all the amazing places that Iceland has to offer. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. Visit the links in the description below and have a great ski trip in Iceland.